Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're exploring Let It Settle, a book that's all about, well, finding calm.
Yeah.
You know, in a world that sometimes feels like it's constantly trying to spin us up.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we can all relate to that feeling of unease we're all kind of facing and how to handle those emotions.
Right.
So this deep dive, we're going to explore mindfulness-based tools and techniques from this book and see how we can actually find those pockets of calm amidst all the chaos.
Yeah.
You know what's really cool about Let It Settle? It's not just like a bunch of fluffy advice. There are actual stories and examples that we can relate to. Like, there's this one story about a preschooler's meltdown that honestly taught me a lot about how we as adults react to stress.
That's so interesting. I love how it dives into the physiological side of things, too. Like how our nervous systems are basically stuck in this like fight or flight mode from way back in the day, you know, and how that impacts us now.
It's like our bodies haven't quite caught up to the fact that we're not running from saber-toothed tigers anymore.
Exactly.
But we're still reacting like we are.
Yeah. And you know what else I really appreciate about it? It makes it clear that finding calm, it's not just like this one and done thing. It's an ongoing process.
Oh, for sure.
It's a skill you build and adapt, you know?
Okay, so let's jump into that preschooler story. The book introduces us to Jack, this adorable 3-year-old who's having like the classic preschool drop-off meltdown. He's all excited at first, you know, sees the toys, the other kids.
Oh, I can picture it.
Big blue eyes sparkling.
Yeah.
And then the second mom says goodbye, full-blown waterworks.
It's so relatable, though, isn't it? It's like that feeling of everything's okay, and then suddenly you're just completely overwhelmed. And that's what's fascinating, how that mirrors how we react to stress as adults. Like, we think we're handling things fine, and then boom, something triggers that fear response.
Totally.
For Jack, it was his mom leaving, but for us, it could be anything. A work deadline, or even just our own thoughts going haywire.
And what's interesting is how they tried to calm Jack down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tried distracting him with toys and games, but it actually backfired.
Yeah, that makes sense. Distraction, sometimes it just avoids the real issue.
Yeah. He needed to feel safe and grounded, not distracted. And this is where Let It Settle introduces this really helpful tool, the 5-4-3-2-1 calming technique. It's all about using your 5 senses to ground yourself in the present moment.
Oh, yeah, this is a great one.
Have you ever used this?
I use this with my clients all the time, especially those who struggle with anxiety. It's like a portable toolkit for your nervous system.
So basically, you start by noticing 5 things you can see around you. Then 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
The science behind it is really cool. You know, when we focus on our senses, we're basically pulling our attention away from all the worries and thoughts in our minds and bringing it back to our bodies and our surroundings.
Oh, that makes sense. And I actually used this technique myself during a crazy subway delay a few weeks ago. I was packed in like a sardine. The air was thick. My anxiety was like through the roof. But I started going through those 5 senses.
Wow.
You know, the posters on the walls, the feeling of the pole in my hand, the rumbling of the train. And it really helped.
It gives your mind something to focus on other than all those anxious thoughts.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to a story that takes us out of the preschool and into the world of high achievers. The book introduces us to Caleb. This super bright guy just got accepted into Yale for grad school. You'd think he'd be ecstatic, right?
Champagne popping, confetti everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But instead, he's hit with this wave of fear and anxiety. He actually called me late one night, panicking, saying his chest felt tight and he couldn't breathe.
This is a classic example of how fear shows up even when things are good.
Right.
You know, and it's important to remember that fear in itself, it's not a bad thing. It's often trying to protect us.
Okay.
Like, think of your brain as this like super vigilant bodyguard. Sometimes it's a little overprotective.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Like in Caleb's case, getting into Yale was huge, but his brain's still firing off those what if signals.
The what ifs.
What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself?
That inner critic working overtime.
Exactly.
So how do you help someone like Caleb quiet down those alarm bells and actually find some calm?
Well, the first step, and this might sound counterintuitive, is to actually acknowledge the fear. Don't push it away. Don't try to pretend it's not there. Face it head on.
Oh, interesting.
There's power in just naming it, you know?
So you're not trying to ignore it. You're actually acknowledging that it's there.
Yeah, it's like you're taking away some of its power by bringing it out into the open.
Okay, so I worked with Caleb on identifying those feelings, the physical sensations that he was experiencing. We even did this exercise where he put his hand on his chest and said out loud, "I'm feeling anxious right now."
Sounds simple, but it's really grounding, isn't it?
It is. It's like you're acknowledging what's happening in your body without judging it.
Yeah, you're not fighting it, you're just letting it be.
Right.
And then once you've acknowledged the fear, you can start to explore where it's coming from.
Right. So we started digging into that, and it all boiled down to this deep-seated fear of failure, this belief that he wasn't good enough. It stemmed from some pretty harsh criticism he had received from his dad growing up.
So the fear wasn't really about Yale, it was about this old story he was carrying around. And that's what happens a lot with these anxieties. They're not usually about right now. They're about some past hurt or some imagined threat in the future.
And once Caleb saw that, once he realized the fear was based on an old story, not the reality of his current situation, the intensity started to lessen.
That aha moment is so powerful.
It is.
It's like you suddenly realize those thoughts, they're not necessarily true. They're just thoughts, you know?
And to help him regulate his nervous system even further, I introduced him to a technique called the butterfly hug. Have you heard of this?
Oh, yes. This is a great one. I use this with my clients who are working through trauma. It's amazing how something so simple can be so effective.
It's a somatic therapy technique where you cross your arms and gently tap on your chest like you're mimicking the wings of a butterfly.
It stimulates the vagus nerve, which plays a big role in calming our stress response.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as he was doing the butterfly hug, we talked about all the safety nets he already had in place, his supportive friends, his accomplishments, his own resilience. It's like reminding ourselves that even if things don't go perfectly, we have resources to help us.
Absolutely. We're not alone in this.
And finally, I encourage Caleb to take a small but symbolic action to kind of move forward despite the fear. In his case, it was signing that Yale acceptance letter.
Oh, wow.
It was like a way of saying, okay, fear, I hear you, but I'm not going to let you stop me.
It's a step towards courage.
Now let's dive into a story that highlights the challenges of letting go. Let It Settle introduces us to Stephanie, a recently divorced client who seems to have it all together. Successful career, beautiful home, actively building a new social life. But underneath, she's struggling to let go of the past and embrace her new future.
It's so common after a big life change, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we're holding on to this idealized version of how we thought things were supposed to be.
And for Stephanie, she was clinging to this vision of the future she'd built with her ex-husband. The house, the vacations, the family.
It can feel like grieving a loss.
Totally. Even if logically the relationship's over.
Right, exactly.
Emotionally, you're still holding on.
The heart doesn't always follow logic.
So how do we help someone like Stephanie navigate this process of letting go and actually create space for something new?
Well, Let It Settle introduces this technique called future mapping.
Okay.
Have you used this one?
Yeah, actually, it's been really helpful. It's basically a structured way of examining your current life and envisioning a future that's more aligned with your values.
I like that.
So you identify 7 key areas of life: relationships, career, finances, health, personal growth, spirituality, and leisure.
Oh, it's a holistic approach.
And for each area, you reflect on where you are, where you want to be, and the steps to bridge that gap.
It's not just setting goals, it's looking at the deeper stuff.
Right, exactly. And for Stephanie, she realized the future she was grieving wasn't actually one she desired. It was based on her ex-husband's dreams, not her own.
Wow, that's a powerful realization.
It is. It's about reclaiming your own dreams.
Exactly.
And as she let go of that old story, she started envisioning a future aligned with her passions. She rediscovered her love for painting, started taking dance classes, explored new career opportunities. It was like she was finally giving herself permission to blossom.
That's beautiful. Letting go can be so freeing.
It is. And you know what? I've actually experienced this longing for that feeling of home myself. Not just a physical home, but that sense of belonging and connection.
That deep sense of belonging, yeah.
Yeah. It's like that longing for that feeling, and it was frustrating because it felt inconsistent.
Yeah, I think we all crave that feeling of truly coming home to ourselves.
We do.
And Let It Settle talks about how it's not a one-time event, but it's like a series of moments built on self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-love, connection, and calm.
It's about those qualities within, not something external.
Yeah, like we're carrying that sense of home inside us rather than searching for it externally.
And for me, the big realization was that I was clinging so tightly to those good moments, those times when I felt happy and secure, that I wasn't really allowing myself to fully embrace the changes and challenges that, life inevitably brings.
That makes sense.
It was like I was afraid of being unsettled, of not having everything figured out.
We all crave that sense of certainty, don't we?
We do. But it's an illusion, right?
Right.
Life is about change.
Absolutely. It's like trying to hold on to a river. You can't do it.
You can't. Okay, let's explore a story about navigating those tricky dynamics in relationships. Let It Settle introduces us to Barbara, who came to me totally confused about her new partner, Phil.
Oh, tell me more.
They've been dating for about 6 months. Things were going great. Lots of laughter, romantic dinners, the whole 9 yards. Then, out of the blue, Phil starts pulling away, canceling dates, short text replies, that kind of thing.
Oh, I've been there. It's so easy to personalize that.
Oh, it is. Barbara was devastated. She felt like she'd done something wrong, like he was losing interest, ready to end things before he broke her heart. But instead of jumping to conclusions, we took some time to explore those feelings of hurt and confusion.
Yeah.
And then we shifted gears to try and understand Phil's perspective.
And this is where Let It Settle brings in this fantastic tool called empathetic inquiry.
Oh, I love this one.
Have you used this one before?
Yeah, it's a game changer.
It's like a superpower.
It is.
It's like putting on those empathy glasses.
Right. It's a process of asking questions that help you step outside your own limited perspective and actually see the world through someone else's eyes.
It's so powerful.
So the first question we explored with Barbara was, what values and beliefs might be guiding Phil's actions? And we uncovered that Phil was deeply rooted in his faith, family, and honoring the memory of his late wife, who had passed away a few years earlier.
So there was a lot more going on beneath the surface.
There was. And suddenly, his behavior made more sense.
Yeah, it wasn't about her. It was about his own internal struggle.
Right. And the next question in the empathetic inquiry process is, how might his actions be benefiting him? Again, not about condoning hurtful behavior, but understanding that even actions that seem negative might be serving some purpose for the person.
Like a coping mechanism, even if it's not a healthy one in the long run.
Right. And in Phil's case, pulling away might have been his way of honoring his late wife, protecting himself from further heartbreak, and maybe even protecting Barbara from getting hurt.
Avoiding pain can feel like the safest option sometimes, even if it hurts others.
And then the final question, what's the pain beneath all of this, and how can you show compassion? This is where true empathy kicks in, recognizing that even people who hurt us are often hurting themselves.
Shifting from judgment to understanding, from blame to compassion.
It's not easy, but it's so powerful. So for Barbara, this whole empathetic inquiry process was a game changer.
How so?
It helped her understand that Phil's behavior wasn't a personal attack.
Right.
He was working through his own grief and wasn't ready for the kind of relationship she was seeking. Instead of feeling rejected and resentful, she felt compassion for him and herself.
What a beautiful outcome.
It is. It really shifted her perspective. Okay, let's talk about anger, which can be a tricky emotion to navigate. It's one of those feelings we often try to suppress or avoid. But Let It Settle actually encourages us to lean into our anger and learn to express it healthfully.
It makes sense, though, when you think about it. Anger is a natural human response. It's often a signal that something's off.
Right, a boundary's been crossed.
Yeah, or a need isn't being met.
But we tend to just try and push it away.
And when we do that, it can come out in these unhealthy ways.
Oh, absolutely. Passive aggressiveness, irritability.
Even physical symptoms like headaches.
Yeah.
It's important to not just acknowledge the anger, but understand where it's coming from.
Right, the root cause.
Yeah, what's the story we're telling ourselves? What beliefs are fueling it? Once we get that why, we can manage it better.
So Let It Settle shares this story of Ethan, a client who came to me after getting some tough feedback at work. His colleague said he had a short fuse.
Oh, no.
But Ethan wasn't even aware of it.
That's interesting. It's like the anger was operating on autopilot.
Yeah, like below his conscious awareness.
We can get so used to our own patterns that we don't see how they affect others.
And sometimes it takes that external feedback to wake us up.
Absolutely.
So for Ethan, the first step was becoming aware of the physical signs of his anger.
Okay.
The tight chest, the clenched jaw, the racing heart. Tuning in to those body signals.
It's about developing that interoceptive awareness.
Right, to catch it before it escalates.
Yeah, being mindful of those sensations.
And I had him start a journaling practice. Whenever he felt those signs of anger, he'd write down all the thoughts going through his head.
I love journaling. What did he discover?
Well, first, he realized his thoughts were often exaggerated.
Oh, interesting.
Fueled by that anger response.
Right.
Like, if someone cut him off in traffic, his immediate thought was, this jerk is trying to kill me.
That's extreme. Instead of maybe, oh, they probably didn't see me.
Exactly. Our brains jump to the worst-case scenario when we're angry.
Negativity bias taking over.
And journaling helped him slow down his thinking, challenge those automatic thoughts. He'd write the thought down, then ask himself, is that really true? Is there another way to see it?
Holding those thoughts up to scrutiny.
Right. And as he became more mindful, he realized his anger was often triggered by this underlying belief that he wasn't being respected.
So a deeper issue driving it.
Which stemmed from childhood experiences where he felt unseen and unheard by his parents.
So past wounds being reactivated.
And this is where the book introduces the anger raid meditation.
Oh, tell me about that.
It stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and determine.
I like it. It's an action plan.
So recognize is becoming aware of the anger, the physical sensations, the thoughts.
Acknowledging it's there without judgment.
Exactly. Allow is giving yourself permission to feel the anger without resisting it.
Creating space for the anger.
Investigate is where you explore it with curiosity. What's the story you're telling yourself? What are your unmet needs?
Like a detective uncovering the clues.
And determine is choosing a course of action.
Okay.
How do I want to respond to this? How can I communicate effectively?
It's about taking back control.
Right. For Ethan, this was huge. It helped him interrupt those automatic reactions, understand the root of his anger, and find constructive ways to express his feelings.
Mindfulness in action.
It is. Now, speaking of mindfulness, I have a confession. I wasn't always a fan of this stuff, especially loving-kindness meditation.
I can relate to that.
It sounded way too woo-woo for me.
Yeah, the name can be a bit misleading.
It can. But I tried it, and honestly, I'm so glad I did. I started to notice some pretty amazing shifts.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, at first it felt weird, like I was just saying these empty phrases in my head. But over time, I became less judgmental, both of myself and others. I was more patient, and I experienced more genuine connection with people.
That's wonderful.
It was like rewiring my brain for compassion.
That's what's so cool about loving kindness meditation. It actually changes the brain.
There's science to back it up.
There is. Studies show it increases activity in areas of the brain related to empathy, compassion, positive emotions.
Like you're strengthening those pathways.
Exactly. And Let It Settle gives a really great guide to the practice. Focusing on your breath, generating feelings of warmth, directing those feelings towards yourself and others. And you can start small, just a few minutes a day.
The book uses these traditional phrases that are so simple but powerful.
What are they?
Like, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease.
Beautiful.
You can direct them to yourself, loved ones, strangers, even people you find difficult.
It's about extending that kindness outwards.
Yeah, and Let It Settle encourages you to personalize the phrases. Find what feels authentic for you, and to integrate them into daily life, beyond formal meditation.
Making it a way of being.
Right, like repeating them silently when you're stressed, or directing them towards others to cultivate more connection.
Little doses of kindness throughout the day.
It's like injecting a little love into the world.
It really is. I love that image.
And, speaking of those little doses of love, Let It Settle tells this story about a student named Claire.
Oh, okay.
She came to one of my loving-kindness classes after a really tough breakup.
Heartbreak is so hard.
She was carrying so much anger towards her ex.
It's a natural response to pain.
It is.
Yeah.
At first, she was like, why should I send good vibes to someone who treated me badly?
I can understand that resistance.
Yeah. But as we talked, she started to understand that loving kindness wasn't about condoning his behavior. It was about cultivating peace within herself.
It's for you, not for them.
Exactly. And surprisingly, as she practiced, she started to feel a shift. At first, just a softening of her anger, a bit of understanding.
That's a beautiful beginning.
It is. And as she continued, it grew into compassion for him and for herself.
That's amazing. Loving kindness can really open our hearts.
It can. And eventually, Claire was able to forgive her ex. Not for him, but for her own peace of mind. She realized holding on to the anger was only hurting her.
Forgiveness is such a powerful act of healing.
It is. It's about releasing those negative emotions and choosing peace.
It frees you from the past.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Finding calm, coming home to ourselves, navigating thoughts and emotions, the power of empathy and forgiveness. Let it settle also dives into some practical mindfulness techniques.
Oh, I love those practical tools.
Me too. And one that really stands out is the safe space meditation. Have you ever tried this?
Oh, yes, the safe space meditation. It's amazing for managing stress and anxiety. It's like creating a mental sanctuary you can go to anytime.
It is. It's all about visualizing a place in your mind where you feel safe, grounded, at peace. And it's so easy to do.
Let It Settle has a guided meditation, but you can create your own visualization too.
You can, based on what feels comforting to you. And the more you practice, the more real and accessible this safe space becomes.
Like a mental muscle you're strengthening.
So imagine you're in a stressful situation, stuck in traffic, about to give a presentation, having a tough conversation. Instead of getting swept away by those feelings,
you press pause.
Yeah, you close your eyes, take a deep breath, and visualize yourself in that safe space, shifting your focus from external stressors to inner peace.
It's like hitting the reset button.
And engage all your senses. What do you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel?
The more vivid, the better.
Right. It could be a beach, a forest, a childhood bedroom, whatever feels nurturing to you.
It's your personal oasis.
It is. And you can return to it whenever you need it.
A portable sanctuary.
It's like having a secret weapon for navigating the chaos of life.
I love that.
Me too. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive into Let It Settle. Understanding our stress response, managing fear and anxiety, letting go of the past, the power of empathy, creating a safe space. We've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
There is.
Yeah.
And in the next part, we'll delve even deeper, looking at how we can integrate these principles into our daily lives and create a ripple effect of calmness and connection in the world around us.
I'm excited to continue this journey.
Me too. I can't wait to share more with you next time.
See you then. You know, it's amazing how these ideas of calm and connection kind of tie into this concept of finding home. You know, like finding that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
It's something we often look for externally, you know, in a place or with a person. But Let It Settle argues that true belonging, it starts within ourselves.
That's so powerful. It's like we're carrying that sense of home inside of us.
Right, exactly.
And not something we need to find.
Yeah. And the book highlights these 5 key aspects of this inner home: self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-love, connection, and calm. Think of them like the pillars that hold everything up.
It's like building that strong foundation.
Yeah, exactly. And what's important is that it's not a linear process. You know, there will be times when you feel lost, disconnected.
Like with any construction project, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We hit bumps in the road.
You'll have to like tear down some walls and rebuild.
Right.
But the key is to be patient with yourself. Embrace those challenges as part of the process.
It's a journey.
It is. And Let It Settle reminds us that coming home to yourself, it happens in those small moments. You know, a quiet walk in nature, a conversation with a friend, or even just taking a deep breath.
Those little moments of peace.
Yeah, exactly. It's about noticing and savoring those moments. Okay, so shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about thoughts. You know, they can be our best friends, our worst enemies, or sometimes a very confusing mix of both.
Oh my gosh, yes. They never stop.
And the book really highlights how often we have so little control over the thoughts that just pop into our heads.
It's like that never-ending inner monologue.
It really is. And it can be exhausting, but Let It Settle encourages us to become more aware of those thoughts.
Right.
Not to try and control them, because that's almost impossible, but to observe them with a sense of detachment.
So you're not your thoughts.
Exactly.
You're observing them.
Yeah, it's like our thoughts are just mental events, like clouds passing through the sky.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, we don't have to identify with them or believe them or get swept away by them. We can just watch them go by.
That helps to create some distance.
It does. And when we can observe our thoughts without judgment, without getting caught up in the story they're telling, we can start to gain some perspective.
Yeah.
We realize that our thoughts, they're not necessarily true.
Right.
They're just thoughts.
And this is where the book brings in this concept of the inner gremlin.
Oh, the inner gremlin.
It's that voice in our heads that's always criticizing, doubting, putting us down.
Oh, we all have that little gremlin.
We do. It's like that little saboteur.
Yeah, that loves to whisper, "You're not good enough, you're going to fail. Who do you think you are?"
And it can be so loud.
It can, but by giving it a name, by giving it a form, we can start to detach from it, and see it for what it is. Just a collection of unhelpful thought patterns, not the absolute truth.
It's not real.
It's not.
Yeah.
And let it settle suggests that once we've identified that inner gremlin, we can start to challenge those negative thoughts, question their validity, and replace them with more supportive and empowering beliefs.
I like that. And one technique that really stands out is the gremlin discovery technique.
Oh, tell me about this one. I haven't heard of this.
Yeah, this is cool. It's an exercise where you actually visualize your inner gremlin.
Okay, so how do you visualize that?
You can get creative with it. Some people see it as a little monster, a grumpy old troll, or mischievous imp.
That's fun.
Yeah, anything that symbolizes that critical voice.
I love it. And then what do?
Then you actually have a dialogue with it.
Oh, interesting.
You're having a conversation.
You talk to the gremlin.
You ask questions like, why are you saying these things to me? What are you trying to protect me from? What do you really need?
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. And as you listen to its responses, you might be surprised at what you discover about yourself.
So it's a way to understand that inner critic better.
And the key is to establish boundaries. Thank it for trying to protect you, but let it know you're in charge.
They're taking back the reins.
Right, exactly. Okay, let's talk about self-love, which could be a loaded term.
Oh, yeah. People either love it or hate it.
Right. It's often misunderstood. It's not about being arrogant and narcissistic.
It's about recognizing your own worth.
And treating yourself with kindness, compassion, respect, the same way you'd treat someone you care about.
And it's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. It's about unlearning those negative self-beliefs and replacing them with more loving and accepting thoughts. And it's not always easy. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we're not enough.
It's a constant battle against those societal pressures.
It is. It takes effort to challenge those messages and cultivate a positive relationship with ourselves. I'm reminded of a client, Andrea.
Okay.
She was incredibly successful on paper, but she struggled with deep feelings of inadequacy.
That's so common.
It is. She was constantly comparing herself to others, never feeling good enough.
It's the comparison trap.
And at first, she was resistant to the idea of self-love.
Yeah, it can feel uncomfortable.
She saw it as selfish, maybe even narcissistic.
But it's really the opposite, isn't it?
It is. As we explored it, she began to understand that self-love is about honoring your true self.
Embracing all of you.
Imperfections and all. And that acceptance can be so liberating.
It really is.
For Andrea, it had this ripple effect.
Oh, how so?
Her relationships improved, she was less critical, and she was able to prioritize her own well-being.
That's amazing. It shows how self-love impacts every area of life.
And Let It Settle recommends this beautiful technique called the self-love guided visualization.
Oh, I love visualization.
Me too. You imagine someone who loves you unconditionally.
Okay.
It could be a parent, a grandparent, a spiritual figure, even a pet.
Someone who sees your worth.
Yes, and you visualize them sending you loving energy, words of affirmation, feelings of warmth. You can imagine them holding you, embracing you, whispering words of encouragement.
It's like bathing in love.
And as you receive this love, you allow yourself to feel worthy, loved, deserving of happiness.
It's powerful, replenishing that inner well of love.
Okay, let's talk about forgiveness, which can be tough.
Oh, yeah, especially when the hurt runs deep.
It's one thing to forgive a small mistake, but what about those situations where there's no apology?
Right.
Let it settle. Emphasizes that forgiveness is not about condoning bad behavior, but releasing yourself from the anger and resentment.
It's for your own peace of mind.
Exactly. It's not about letting the other person off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the pain.
That's such an important distinction.
It is. The book tells the story of Daniel, who was struggling to forgive his father for years of emotional abuse. He wanted to reconcile, but the hurt was holding him back.
It's like holding on to a hot coal.
You're only burning yourself.
Exactly. Holding on to that anger doesn't punish the other person. It just hurts you.
And Daniel had spent years minimizing his experiences.
Oh, wow.
Telling himself it wasn't that bad, he should just get over it. But we worked on acknowledging the hurt, allowing himself to feel the pain.
Facing it head on.
Because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge.
And that can be the hardest part.
It can. Then we explored the possibility of empathizing with his father.
Oh, that's tough.
It is, but Let It Settle reminds us that empathy isn't about condoning behavior.
Right. It's about understanding
the motivations behind it, the pain that might have led to those actions.
Hurt people.
And we used empathetic inquiry.
Okay.
Exploring his father's upbringing, values, fears. And as Daniel saw his father through this lens of empathy, something shifted.
Wow. What happened?
He understood that his father's behavior, while hurtful, wasn't about him.
It was about the father's own issues.
Yes, his unresolved pain. And this allowed Daniel to let go of some anger and resentment.
Understanding can be so powerful.
It can. And this opened the door to forgiveness.
That's beautiful.
He reached out to his father, had an honest conversation, shared his hurt, but also his understanding.
Wow, so brave.
And you know what? His father apologized.
Really?
Genuine apology, acknowledging the pain he'd caused. And for Daniel, it was a catalyst for healing. He could finally let go of the past and move forward.
That's an incredible story.
It is. It's a reminder that even in the most strained relationships, healing is possible.
There's always hope.
Now, let's talk about a practice that I've personally found incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Loving kindness meditation.
Oh, I love this practice. It's so powerful.
It is. But I'll admit, I was skeptical at first. It sounded a little too, I don't know.
Ooh.
Yeah, like something out of a hippie commune.
I get it. The name can be a bit misleading.
It can. But I tried it, and I'm so glad I did. Over time, I noticed amazing shifts in myself.
Like what?
I was less critical, more patient. I felt a deeper connection with people.
It's like you were radiating kindness.
It really was, like rewiring my brain for compassion.
And the amazing thing is that there's actually science behind it.
Really?
Yeah, studies have shown that loving kindness meditation can increase activity in the brain related to empathy, compassion, and positive emotions.
So it's not just a feeling, it's changing the brain.
It's training your brain for kindness. And Let It Settle gives a great guide to the practice. You focus on your breath, generate feelings of warmth and compassion, and then direct those feelings toward yourself and others.
The book uses these simple but powerful phrases.
Like what?
May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease.
Beautiful phrases.
And you can direct them to anyone, even people you find challenging.
Expanding that circle of compassion.
Right. And Let It Settle encourages you to personalize the phrases, find what resonates with you.
Make it your own.
And also to integrate them into daily life, beyond your formal meditation practice.
Yeah, like little reminders throughout the day.
Like silently repeating them when you're stressed or directing them towards others to foster connection.
It's about making it a way of being, not just a practice.
Absolutely. And speaking of this practice,
Yeah.
Let It Settle shares a story about Claire, a student who came to one of my loving kindness classes. She was heartbroken after a really bad breakup, filled with anger and resentment towards her ex.
Heartbreak can be so tough.
It is. And at first, she was resistant to the idea of practicing loving kindness towards him. She asked, why should I send good vibes to someone who treated me so badly?
That's understandable.
But we talked about how loving kindness wasn't about condoning his actions. It was about finding peace within herself.
It's about letting go of that negativity.
And to her surprise, as she practiced, she started to feel a shift.
What kind of shift?
At first, just a softening of her anger, a glimmer of understanding.
That's a beautiful start.
It is. And as she continued, it grew into compassion, not just for him, but for herself too.
That's the power of this practice.
And eventually, Claire was able to forgive her ex.
Wow.
Not for his sake, but for her own. Holding on to the anger was only hurting her.
Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself.
It is. It's about choosing peace over pain.
And that choice can be so liberating.
Okay, so we've talked about finding calm, coming home to ourselves, navigating thoughts and emotions, the power of forgiveness, and loving kindness. Let It Settle also gives us some really helpful mindfulness techniques.
I love those.
And one that I personally use almost every day is the safe space meditation.
Oh, yes. The safe space meditation is one of my favorites.
It's amazing for managing stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
It's like creating this mental sanctuary where you can go to feel safe, grounded, and at peace.
It's like your own personal retreat.
And it's so easy. The book has a guided meditation, but you can also create your own visualization.
Based on what feels good to you.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more real and accessible this safe space becomes.
It's like building a mental muscle.
So imagine you're in a stressful situation. Traffic, a presentation, a difficult conversation. Instead of letting the anxiety take over, you close your eyes, take a breath, and visualize yourself in that safe space.
It's like hitting the pause button on the chaos.
Right. Shifting your focus from external stress to that inner peace.
I love that.
And engage all your senses. What do you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel in this space? The more vivid, the better.
Make it come alive.
Your safe space could be anything. A beach, a forest, even your childhood bedroom.
It's your sanctuary.
And you can return to it anytime you need it.
It's always there for you.
A portable oasis of peace.
And I think that's a really beautiful image and segues perfectly into this next point about how our inner world and outer world are so interconnected.
They are. It's like a two-way street.
Exactly. Let it settle really highlights how the work we do internally through mindfulness, compassion, all these practices we've been talking about, it directly impacts how we show up in the world, in our relationships, in our communities.
Like that ripple effect, right?
Exactly. And speaking of connection, Let It Settle also dives into the importance of empathy as a practice.
Not just a feeling.
Yeah. It's about making that conscious effort to understand others' perspectives and experiences, even when they're very different from our own.
And the book reintroduces that concept of empathetic inquiry as a tool for this.
It's such a powerful tool.
It is. It's about shifting from judgment to curiosity, from blame to understanding.
It starts with those key questions.
Right. What values and beliefs might be guiding their actions? How might their actions be benefiting them? What's the pain beneath it all?
Those questions can be so revealing.
They are. And what's cool is that we can use empathetic inquiry not just for others, but for ourselves too.
Oh, self-empathy.
Right. It's about understanding our own motivations and behaviors and recognizing that we're all works in progress.
We're all on our own journeys.
Absolutely. And there's this quote from the book that I love. Each person you've met and every situation you've encountered has impacted the way you exist in the world.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is. It's a reminder that we're all shaped by our experiences and that those experiences color how we see things.
Yeah.
And by understanding that, by recognizing that everyone is carrying their own story, we can start to cultivate more compassion and understand.
It's about seeing each other's humanity.
Exactly. So, as we continue exploring Let It Settle, it's important to remember that finding calm is not about achieving some permanent state of bliss.
It's not about being happy all the time.
It's about learning to navigate the ups and downs of life, to ride the waves of emotions, to be present with all our experiences, and find that center of peace within.
It's about embracing the whole journey.
And we don't have to do it alone. There's strength in sharing our stories and supporting each other.
We're all in this together.
We are. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd love to hear what's resonating with you. What are your key takeaways?
For me, it's the emphasis on self-compassion. It's so important, especially in today's world.
I agree. And I love the practical techniques that Let It Settle offers. The 5-4-3-2-1 calming technique, the safe space meditation, the loving kindness meditation. They've made a real difference for me.
And I love how the book combines those techniques with real-life stories and insights from science.
It's a great blend of ancient wisdom and modern research.
Absolutely. It's a guidebook for a more mindful and compassionate life.
And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how we can integrate these principles and practices into our daily lives, creating that ripple effect of calm and connection in the world around us.
I can't wait to see where this exploration takes us next.
Welcome back. As we continue exploring Let It Settle, it's really striking how this book goes beyond just individual well-being. It connects our personal journeys to our relationships and communities.
It's like those ripples we were talking about, right? Our actions impact everyone around us.
It's that idea of you can't pour from an empty cup. If we're not taking care of ourselves, it's tough to show up for others in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. We can't give what we don't have, and Let It Settle really highlights that. Using these mindfulness tools not just for us, but to create a more compassionate world.
We're all in this together, right? Our well-being is connected to our communities and the planet.
Exactly. And one way to create that ripple effect is by aligning our actions with our values, asking those big questions. What do I care about? What kind of world do I want to see?
It's about moving beyond just reacting to the day-to-day and making conscious choices.
And those choices can be big. Speaking up against injustice, volunteering, advocating for change.
Or they can be small acts of kindness.
Like a smile, holding a door open, just listening to a friend.
Those little things matter.
They do. They create a ripple effect of kindness.
Now, I've been thinking about how it can feel overwhelming to incorporate all these practices into our lives. Where do we even start?
It's important to remember progress, not perfection.
Right.
Let it settle, says. Start small. 1 or 2 practices that resonate with you.
Like any new habit, small, consistent steps.
And be kind to yourself along the way. There will be days when you fall short.
We all do.
The key is to learn, forgive yourself, and keep going.
So I want to share a few nuggets of wisdom from Let It Settle that I keep coming back to. Reminders for navigating life.
I love those little gems of wisdom.
First one. Finding calm is a process, not a destination. It's a journey, not about reaching some perfect state of serenity.
It's about learning to ride the waves.
Exactly. This next one has helped me create space for my thoughts. We are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are simply mental events, like clouds passing through the sky.
It's about recognizing that we can choose which thoughts to engage with.
This next one has been huge for me. Self-love is not selfish. It's about recognizing our inherent worth and treating ourselves with kindness and compassion.
It's about being our own best friend.
And this one reminds me that our well-being is intertwined with others. Empathy is a practice. It's about making a conscious effort to understand and connect with the perspectives of others.
Empathy is the bridge between us.
And finally, this one has helped me through tough times. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It's about releasing the burden of anger and choosing peace.
It's about setting yourself free.
So, which of these resonate with you? Which ones might you want to explore in your own life?
And remember, this journey of cultivating calm, connection, and compassion, it's ongoing. There will be ups and downs. Keep practicing, keep exploring, keep opening your heart.
You're not alone on this path. We're all in this together. Take a deep breath, find a moment of calm, and know that you have everything you need to create a life filled with meaning, purpose, and joy. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.